What's up, everyone? Welcome back to King Anime Review, and for this video, I will be giving you my Boruto Naruto Next Generation's story arc tier list. Now, this will include arcs from both the anime and the manga, and there's only two arcs that I haven't seen, and both of those are anime-only arcs, anime-exclusive arcs, and those arcs are the Konohamaru arc and the Mirai Sarutobi arc. Now, the Mirai Sarutobi arc I've seen about 2 or 3 episodes of, but I didn't finish the arc. The Konohamaru arc, I didn't watch any of it. I skipped both of those arcs basically, and I just started to rewatch this Mirai Sarutobi arc. Now, after I finish rewatching both of these arcs in the anime, I mean not rewatching, but after I finish watching both of these arcs, after I finish fully watching both of these arcs in the anime, I might do a updated tier list video, a new tier list video. But for this video, I will not be including either one of those arcs. So let's, without no further ado, let's get right into it. So starting off with the Academy arc, it's a very underrated arc. It set up and established a lot of the stuff that happened in the future. It set up Boruto's character development, and his relationship with his dad. It showed us how he went from, at the start of the series, he was like how he started to not like his dad and how he started to develop a dislike for his dad. It showed us that in that arc, and that's something that Boruto ended up developing out of. He basically ended up getting character development in the Momoshiki slash tuning exams arc, where he told his dad, "Hey, things can remain how they used to be. They can stay the same. But when we do spend time together, I want you to tell me stories from about your past." And yeah, that's character development because throughout the entire anime up until the Momoshiki slash tuning exams arc, Boruto pretty much didn't like his dad, and they set that up perfectly. Well, I'm not gonna say perfectly, but they set that up in the in the Academy arc, and yeah, they set it up fantastically. And the reason I'm not gonna say perfectly is because I don't consider anything to be perfect. Nothing in this world is perfect at all. So that was a I didn't mean to say the word perfect. Now, yeah, so they did a great job at setting that up and showing us how Boruto started to develop a dislike for his dad. And in the Momoshiki slash tuning exams arc, he ended up getting some character development and changing from that. This arc had Sumire, she had a great backstory. She was the main focus of the arc towards the end. But Boruto helped her get some character development and helped her realize that, she can make her own, she can follow her own path and she don't have to carry out what her father wanted her to do. This arc was just fantastic overall. Even the so-called slice of life stuff was pretty well executed. We got even you know, Dinky and Wabe, they got great character development in the arc. Wabe going from being a bully who was, very, very mad and frustrated that he couldn't, graduate from the academy, even though he was great at ninjutsu and stuff like that, but he couldn't graduate simply because he failed the other courses that had nothing to do with ninjutsu. He ended up developing out of that, and he ended up developing it into someone who would be willing to put in the work, a lot more of a positive person, who would be willing to put in the work to graduate. Dinky got character development. This arc had tons of character development in the arc. Now, yeah, so that arc, the arc itself, I think it set up the series fantastically. I could put it in S tier, but I'm gonna put it in A tier because despite all of that stuff I was talking about, it did have, it wasn't as, great as it could have been. I think they probably could have, that fight, yeah, the fight itself looked cool and stuff like that, but it was just weird, some certain stuff about it. How Boruto, he punched a portal and, basically went into another dimension and stuff. They could have did a little bit better at explaining some stuff. I am basically nitpicking, but yeah, and the main reason I don't put it in S tier is because I don't think it's as great in terms of story as a lot of the other stuff that's going to be in S tier. But this arc was fantastic, without a doubt. That was a fantastic arc. Now moving on to the next arc, the Hidden Mist Village slash Turbulent Field Trip arc. Now this arc, I'm gonna put it in D tier because Kagura, this guy was flip flopping throughout the entire arc. One second he was a good guy, one second he was a bad guy. His character was all over the place. I didn't like the way his character was written. I think he was. I mean, you could probably argue he had some decent character development towards the end of the arc, but the arc was about what? Yeah, it was about. I think it was about 7 episodes. It might have been maybe at the most. I don't even think it was 15. I think it might have been like 10 at the most. But yeah, the arc it wasn't even that long, and this guy flip flop back and forth throughout the entire course of the arc. At least, like, he went from being a good guy at the start, and then he was a bad guy, then he was a good guy again. Now, I know characters like, for example, Gara, he went from being a bad guy to a good guy. He went from being an antagonist to being a guy on the good side, but that didn't happen over the course of 10 episodes. And also, he only did that once. He only went from a bad guy to a good guy once. Kagura did it basically, he went back and forth 3 times, which is ridiculous, over the course of one arc. Yeah, so he drastically decreases the quality of the arc. He drastically brings down the quality of the arc. Um, the villains in his arc were just standard anime villains, standard, anime, shonen villains. For example, these are one-dimensional villains, like the new Seven Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist. They were one-dimensional villains, just like how in a lot of other animes, such as for example, Dragon Ball, One Piece, you have one-dimensional villains. For example, Frieza, he was evil for the sake of being evil. It was no logical explanation that we seen that showed him becoming evil. Same thing with Blackbeard. He was evil for the sake of being evil. No logical explanation that showed would let him become the villain. No, backstory that explain why he ended up turning evil. That's the same case that you have with these Seven Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist. They were just, I mean, they kind of did have an explanation, but we never seen like exactly what turned them evil, because it could basically, you could basically, they based on what they showed us, it basically seemed like they always had this ideology where they wanted the Hidden Mist village to go back to how it was in the past. But why did they want that? Why did they want things to go back to Blood Mist village, the old days? They didn't like how the new system was with you know with after the war ended. They didn't like the era of peace, but they should have gave us a little bit more detail on that, and that would have made that better. But anyways, Kagura, yeah, he drastically brings down the arc. However, the arc did have some fantastic stuff in it, so that's what keeps it from being a F tier. Some of the fantastic stuff we had in this arc, we had amazing fights. Sarada versus Butan is still one of the best fights in the Boruto anime. Boruto and Kagura and Mitsuki versus Shizumi, a fantastic fight. And yeah, the arc just has some fantastic fights. I mean, those two are the main two that comes to mind. I think I mean, those are the only two that was fantastic. But I think they did have a little bit of other fights, side fights. Um, so that's one thing that's fantastic. Another thing is this is good world building, because we actually got to see, we basically got to see inside the Hidden Mist Village, and we seen Boruto's classmates travel to the Hidden Mist Village. That's world building. We're actually learning more details about the world and how things changed since the Fourth Great Ninja War ended, and how things are in the era of peace, and how much technology has advanced and stuff like that. So yeah, that was good world building. And then the last great thing about this arc is the relationship development throughout the arc, especially with Boruto and Sarada. We got a lot of Boruto Sarada moments in the arc, like when Boruto handed Sarada that squid, and even the Boruto voice, the Boruto cast, the voice actors and actresses from Japan, the Japanese, they were actually saying that Boruto and Sarada are basically on a date in that scene. So we got some great Boruto Sarada moments in the arc, and yeah, so that the Boruto Sarada moments, the relationship development, seeing Boruto further bond with his classmates, that I'm gonna factor that into the relationship developments along with the Boruto Sarada moments. So that's one pro. Another pro is it has some decent world building. Actually, I'll even say some good world building. And then the last great thing about the arc is it had good fights. But everything else about the arc, like I mean, mainly Kagura, he drags down this arc drastically since he was basically one of the central characters of the arc. Now, moving on. This was a mini arc. This was basically about 3 episodes where Boruto was graduating. Boruto and his class was graduating from the academy. It was a little mini arc. I think it was good, but it was very short. I I I I don't even think it should. I mean, I guess we can consider it an arc, but it's a very very small mini arc. But it did a great job at doing what it needed to do. The build test was handled great. Boruto and his classmates all using the teamwork, fantastic. very similar to how it was in Part 1 Naruto. And yeah, some great stuff overall with that. Now, next up, the Mujina Bandits arc, that's getting an S tier. And the Hozuki Castle prison portion of the Mujina Bandits arc, which was a anime only expanded version of the Mujina Bandits arc. I'm gonna consider both of these arcs the exact same, one and the same. They're the same arc because they basically are the same arc. Now in the manga we didn't get this prison portion. In the manga we didn't get the prison portion, but overall the anime made this arc drastically better. So I'm going based off of the anime. The arc was fantastic. You know, we had some great characters like the prisoners who were in the prison with Boruto and Mitsuki and Sarada. Like the guy with the short haircut, I believe he had a mohawk. The guy, I mean, the one who wanted to protect his sister and stuff. Man, some fantastic character development, even with these one-off side characters. Like, just these were some great characters, bro. I really like the characters from the prison. They did a great job at doing that. You know, Tendo, he also got some pretty good character development, going from being a uh stuck-up rich kid, entitled rich kid, you know, who was basically looked down on people and thought money could buy happiness. He basically figured out that that wasn't the case. Got some great character development in the arc. So yeah, that was great. Now moving on to another mini arc. I believe this was a 3 episode arc as well. It did a great job at doing what it needed to do. It was Team Seven's first mission, and I really enjoyed everything that happened in that arc. It has some similarities to the Zabuza arc, but it also has some key differences. But overall, I literally have no problems with the arc. But it was a mini arc, so I'm not gonna rate it too high. I'm gonna put it in the B tier. Next up, the Sarada Uchiha arc. This is a S tier arc, and the reason why is because so Sarada, she has some great character development in this arc. She went from being someone who she thought that she basically by the end of the arc, she you know she accepted the fact that that Sakura is her mother, whether or not even if they didn't have the same DNA. Sakura is her mother. It's about how it's about how people treat you. That's what determines if someone's your family member or not, or if you consider them your parent or whatever. It's about how they treat you, and that's what started to figure out in this arc that you know she developed a understanding and acceptance of Sakura despite DNA or any type of DNA or genetics. But it turned out that Sakura is her biological mother, but Sardi, even before she learned that, by the end of the arc, she had already accepted Sakura as her mother. This has some great relationship development and building between the Uchiha family, Sarada, Sakura, Sasuke. They had some great interaction, some great relationship building and stuff like that. This arc was fantastic. Literally, literally one of the only problems with this arc is the villain, and even he wasn't too bad. Shin Uchiha, the villain, he wasn't even like he wasn't good. He definitely wasn't a good villain, but I'll say he's probably slightly better than Shizumi in the Seven Ninja Swordsman because essentially, his goal was to avenge Itachi and to recreate the Akatsuki. He was pretty much a Akatsuki fanboy. They should have gave us a little bit more detail as to how he ended up, developing why he ended up sympathizing with Itachi and why he ended up wanting to avenge Itachi. They should have gave us some more development on that. He clearly knew nothing about how Itachi. Uh, he clearly really knew nothing about Itachi. He just seemed like a fanboy, but he's another kind of one-dimensional villain. Well, you can't really say necessarily. Well, yeah. Actually, yeah, he is kind of one-dimensional because there's no reason that shows how he went from. There's no logical reason that shows why he ended up turning evil in the first place. He just seems like he was always an Akatsuki fanboy. He's the only downside of the arc. I know Naruto and Sasuke did get nerfed in the arc, but the way they got nerfed was actually logical. Because think about it. Kishimoto gave us a logical explanation. He said that basically Sasuke, when he goes in and out of dimensions, he loses a massive amount of chakra. So Sasuke couldn't even use his Rinnegan to his fullest potential. He could only use the basic Rinnegan. He couldn't use the version 2 6-Tombui Rinnegan that he had, and he also couldn't use his internal Mangekyo Sharingan, so he really didn't use Susanoo when he fought Shin. So, yeah, Kishimoto explained why Sasuke was nerfed, and he also explained why Naruto was nerfed because Naruto was rusty, and he was in the Hokage office, and he hadn't fought in a long period of time, in years. So, yeah, the arc was fantastic, hands down. It was a fantastic arc. Next up, the Momoshiki / Shunin exams arc. Now, I already talked about this briefly when I talked about the Academy arc, but Boruto, he had some great character development in that arc. And yeah, so, and also this was basically it was one of the most, if not, actually I'll say it was the most important setup arc to the Boruto series, because this is when Boruto got the Karma Seal, and this directly sets up a lot of the stuff that we're still seeing in the manga involving, with Momoshiki and how Momoshiki's trying to take over Boruto's body and stuff. So this was the most important setup arc in Boruto. This is a fantastic arc. I like what the anime did. They showed us the fights in the tuning exams. They extended the arc, added a lot more detail and depth to the arc, which is fantastic. This was a fantastic arc overall. So yeah, fantastic arc. Next up, the Vessel arc / the AO arc, as people call it from the manga. But yeah, the Vessel arc, the anime made this arc drastically better. It gave us more detail and depth to Mujina, who was in the manga. Mujina was just a random jonin who we knew basically almost nothing about. But in the anime, they gave us a lot more detail and depth with Mujino for his character, and they actually gave Boruto and Mujino some great interactions and developed their relationship to make Mujino's death seem a lot sadder and more impactful. And they also added some character development for Ayo. They turned Ayo from being a one-dimensional villain like he was in the manga to actually being a pretty well-written villain. It was actually a logical explanation that showed why he ended up turning evil in the first place. That he went from being he basically turned evil after he almost died from the Jubi bomb in the war. He needed power, and you guys know the story. But yeah, he basically needed power, or he thought Shinobi wasn't useful anymore. He needed the scientific ninja tools, etc. So just great stuff overall with that. Next up, the time travel arc. So this arc is very underrated. And look, so I'll just give you a quick explanation. So the reason why this arc is actually S tier is because it literally has some of the best moments, some of the best conversations in the entire Boruto series. The conversation between Naruto and Sasuke, adult Sasuke and kid Naruto. The conversation between Neji and Boruto. The conversation between Naruto and kid Naruto and Boruto when they were talking about Sasuke's past. All of that stuff was fantastic. Those are some of the most emotional, or shall I say heartfelt, great, just flat out amazing moments in Boruto. Those are some great moments. Now, the whole thing with Urashiki. Some people say he ruined the power scaling because he's an Aotsutsuki, and characters like Jiraiya and Kid Naruto and Boruto were still able to fight him. Now the thing is, anybody who brings that argument, you guys might be forgetting the fact that Urashiki was literally just playing around that whole arc. He wasn't serious that whole arc. He was playing around. So, like he was, you could see that he was playing around. He's running around, jumping around, happy, laughing and stuff like that. He was just playing around. He wasn't taking the fights seriously, and that cost him big time. So, yeah, he was basically, just playing around that whole arc. And as far as Sasuke being low on chakra, actually, I kind of do got a problem with that, but it's not enough for me to say the arc is bad or to, drop the arc now, because that's a minor, sort of minor nitpick type of thing. Because think about it. The reason why I still have a problem with it, yet it's not necessarily that bad, is because we did see we seen Urashiki take Sasuke's chakra right before this arc started. And on top of that, he used his Rinnegan multiple times. And we know that his Rinnegan especially when he's going in and out of dimensions, which he did, right before this arc. He ends up running super low on chakra once he goes in and out of dimensions, and he can't use the full extent of his abilities. That's the same thing that happened in the Naruto Gaiden, the Sarada Uchiha arc that I just explained. He after he goes into other dimensions, after he uses Rinnegan to go into other dimensions, he loses a massive amount of chakra. On top of that, Urashiki had already taken the chakra from Sasuke. So Sasuke being low on chakra did make sense initially. But I think the chakra that he got should have recovered. Like he was back in the time. They were in the past for a couple of days. So he should have regained, like his chakra should have recovered naturally over the course of that time they was there. But he still needs to get healed from Sakura and stuff like that. But the thing is, during the Naruto Gaiden arc, we don't know exactly how much time passed between when Sasuke was going in and out of dimension to when his eyes recovered. So I mean to the point where until he was able to use his full power again. So yeah, it makes sense. It's not necessarily anything bad, but yeah, I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. Now, one thing I will say about I did kind of have I had a tiny, problem with that Sasuke being low on chakra thing. But at the same time, I can understand it. Now, one thing I will say about this arc is the fact that Sora didn't go back in time with Boruto and Sasuke was a huge missed opportunity, a huge missed opportunity. But I don't want this video to get too long, so I'm going to move on to the next arc. The Byakuya gang arc. This arc was fantastic. This arc, I will almost put this in S tier, but you know what? S tier is the best of the best. I'm saving S tier for the best of the best. So I'm gonna put this time travel arc in A tier. I'm gonna put this Byakuya gang arc in A tier. This was a great arc. You know, it's pretty much Boruto's ideology clashing with Shukadai's and the Byakuya gang. I mean, Shukadai was pretty much in the middle, and then you had the Byakuya gang, and then you had Boruto. Now, Shukadai, he could understand both sides, which was cool. This was Shukadai at his best. That was peak Shukadai. Shukadai has never been better than what he was in the Byakuya gang arc. Ever since the Byakuya gang arc, Shukadai has been going downhill. But in the Byakuya gang arc, Shukadai peaked. He was fantastic in that arc. So essentially, what it was the Byakuya gang, they were villains, but they were, I guess you can call them kind of like anti-heroes, not necessarily full-fledged villains, because they had this ideology where, basically what they were doing was they were stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, and a lot of people ended up liking them. So, but Boruto, his stance on the issue, his ideology was, he was like, yeah, don't get me wrong, helping out the poor is a good thing, but the way that they were going about it is wrong. Stealing is wrong. Now the question is stealing always wrong? Some people may say, yes, stealing is always wrong. But the thing is, what if, there's a lot of great analogies that people use. One analogy is, like, for example, say your kid needs a certain type of medicine in order to continue to live, right? And you don't have the money to buy that medicine. What your only two options is let your kid die or steal the medicine if you can. A lot of people would steal steal the medicine. Or, for example, if you have no food to eat, and you need food, you need to survive. Your only two options is either die or steal. Which one would you pick? Which one would you pick? So that's the question. That's the moral question of this arc. And this arc, yeah, that was the moral question of it. Shukadai, he could see both sides, and I think Ryogi was a great character in this arc. Had some pretty great character development. The arc was just fantastic overall. I really like this arc. So moving on, next we got another one of these mini arcs, and I think just like these other two mini arcs, it was pretty great. You know, the the Gaiden, what do they call this? The Parent and Child Day arc. It was about 3 episodes. Yeah, it was a pretty good arc. I don't really got much to say about it. I think they did have some pretty good character development in the arc. But yeah, I don't got much to say about it. It was just some cool stuff overall. Now, next up with this Jugo arc. This arc was fantastic. Literally everything about this arc was fantastic except the villain. The villain is the only thing that's keeping this from being an S tier, I think. You know, there were the whole thing, the freedom aspect of the arc, and Boruto, he had, an ideology of you can choose your own fate, you can choose your own destiny. That was one of the points of this arc. and that actually helped Jugo develop into wanting to basically not let that curse mark take control of him, and basically understanding that he can control his own destiny, he can control his own fate. Boruto helped Jugo develop in that way. Fantastic stuff, man. Fantastic. I just love this arc. And then it also set up the whole thing with Sumire, going to the scientific ninja tool, team, joining the scientific ninja tool team because the New Wave was out of control in this arc, and she wanted to see if she could use some type of scientific technology to build a better relationship with the New Wave or to control him better in battle. This was a fantastic arc, man. Like I said, I loved everything about the arc except the villain. The villain was kind of like this, kind of like Shizumi, just a one-dimensional evil for the sake of being evil, standard anime villain. A Frieza, Blackbeard type of villain. Now, moving on. This was the Urashiki arc, which basically was the setup for the time travel arc. It was pretty much just. I mean, this arc did have a couple of positives. Himawari, building a bond with Shukaku, that was cool. Shukaku was pretty funny in the arc. That was some great stuff, great comedy right there. Um, Boruto and Shinki ended up having some relationship development and started to actually become friends. They went from being kind of like very hostile to each other and just not liking each other. They ended up becoming like basically friends at the end of the arc, I believe. So those were and the arc had some great fights too. We actually got to see Tamori fight for the first time in the Boruto anime. We got to see Kankuro fight for the first time in the Boruto anime. We also got to see Sugadai team up with his mother, which was cool. And Boruto and Urashiki versus Boruto and Shinki versus Urashiki was cool. Now, like I said, Urashiki, just like I said in the time travel arc, he wasn't serious, so you can't say that this ruined the power skill, and he was not serious when he was fighting them. But anyways, it was just cool overall. We actually got to see Boruto use the Jogan as well. Now, other than that, the arc, I didn't really like the arc. Other than those positives that I mentioned, I didn't really like the arc necessarily because it was pretty much just Urashiki chasing down Shukaku. It wasn't that interesting to me. Uh, this arc really it was just good at setting up the time travel arc. It was a nice setup for the time travel arc, so I'm gonna put it at high B tier. Now, moving on, the most underrated, overhated, unnecessarily overhated, and the most underrated arc in Boruto, the Chocho arc. This is a tier arc. It has some great character development. Chocho, she went from being a character who was willing to change herself in order to get the approval or the recognition or the attention of a guy she liked. And then at the end of the arc, she ended up developing, and she ended up, basically changing into a person who was comfortable with who she was and who accepted who she was and who was not going to change herself just to get the approval of somebody else. And Miski is the one who helped her realize that, and Miski helped her get great character development, and her and Miski's relationship actually ended up developing as well. That's why at the end of the arc, Chocho gave Miski the bag of chips. This arc, it was fantastic, and it did a great job at developing Chocho. It's the Chocho arc, so obviously Chocho should be getting character development in the arc, which she did, and she got some great character development. And it also developed her and Miski's relationship, and that's why I am a shipper of well, I wouldn't call myself a shipper, but I like the relationship between Chocho and Miski. I think they should end up together, mainly because of this arc. So yeah, it was a fantastic arc. Yeah, I'm putting that high A tier. I'll probably put it if I were to rank these A tier arcs objectively. I'll say this is the order. Yeah, I'll do it like that. All right, so next up, the best arc in the entire Boruto series, the the Kawaki arc. I call it the Kawaki slash Koro arc. This was the best arc in the Boruto series. Absolutely fantastic. Kawaki got great character development in the arc. This arc is just now starting to get adapted into the anime. They've already did a great job at setting things up. Uh, Kawaki going from someone who had no trust and by the way, I'm not gonna give you any major spoilers, but what I will say is Kawaki got some great character development in this arc. Going from someone who had literally no trust in anybody and who was a very angry guy to someone who actually did care about other people and actually did trust and gain trust and love for people in the Hidden Village, in particular Naruto. Now, I'm assuming most of the people watching this is people who read the manga anyways. I already talked about. I gave you a spoiler warning. Well, I basically said it will be including anime and manga arcs. So, anyways, now moving on to the next arc. And I don't. I forgot if I said this or not about the Hidden Mist Village / Turbulent Field Trip arc, but it has some good world building. So that's one of the other saving factors. I mean, one of the other things that raises the arc up a little bit. I think I already said that though. But anyways, with this arc, the Misuki arc, it also has some great world building. We actually got to see Ryuchi Cave for the first time ever, which that was talked about all the way back in Naruto. That was talked about Ryuchi Cave, but we never seen it until Boruto. So that was some great world building with that. We also seen the new version of the Hidden Stone Village, which was cool. Anoki got great character development. Misuki got great character development. Actually, he going from someone who, you know, who didn't know if his will was his own, who was unsure about his will, to actually developing his own will at the end of the arc. This was a fantastic arc. It also had some great fights in this arc. Boruto and Sarada were fantastic in this arc as well. You know, seeing their relationship dynamic. This arc was fantastic overall. Um, I'll probably say it's tied for being. I'll probably say it's tied with the Momoshiki / Tuning Exams arc. And with that being said, that's all the arcs that I'm gonna be. You know, that's all the arcs that on for my tier list. Let me know what you guys, how you guys will rank these arcs. What tier would you put these arcs in the comment section below. If you like the video, please drop a like. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and click that channel notification bell to be notified on all my future videos. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.